On one of my most recent video uploads, I got a very interesting comment that sparked my interest about the Outbreak Easter egg and the difficulty you can get with it by using different weapons. This comment was from Requiem Agent, very cool name, shout out to you, and stated that if you use, for example, an M16, you can get swarmed, or if you use an AMP-63 or shotgun, there are less zombie bosses like the elites, like the Megaton or the Panzers, and that's what we'll be testing out in today's video. I have 4 different games. I have 2 of the games where it's me and my other friends, so 3 players, and we use different weapons in both games, and then there's 2 games that are me in solo and I use different weapons as well to try to see if this is the case. Now before we fully get into the video, be sure to subscribe. We are less than 1,000 subscribers away from 20,000 because you all have been blowing my mind with the subscribe button recently. Thank you all so much, and also be sure to drop a like on the video. Since we aim for 99 likes with the most recent upload, let's aim for 101, which is a weird one, but that's why I like it. Let's get right into the video. So the first game I'm looking at is my first ever completion of this boss fight with my friends, where I used the Carve 2, fully pack-a-punched and gold rarity, and also a Gallo, which was also fully pack-a-punched and gold rarity. The first thing that I noticed in this game is that obviously the first round isn't as chaotic. What I did notice was that there was a similar amount of special zombies like the mimics and the manglers spawning in as it is in solo or the other game that we will be checking out later. By this I mean there's quite a few of them, and they're definitely ones that you have to be kind of careful about and stay as far away as you can. Now another thing that I noticed was on the second stage there is actually slight bit more zombies, which seems to be the case every single time you complete a certain phase after, you know, destroying the orbs. There are more and more zombies that spawn in, but on this phase a Megaton actually ended up spawning in as I was going to go destroy the orbs, which did actually mess up with my destruction of them orbs. But it's interesting because on the second stage we already had a Megaton, which is funny because on the third stage straight away we had a Panzer spawn in, which I'll be honest, I know I'm kind of spoiling what will happen in the future of this video, but in a solo game with just using pistols, I think I only had like either 1 Megaton spawn in or just 1 Panzer, which is crazy. And in addition with this, there is plenty of other zombies spawning in. There's manglers, there's mimics, and it just gets really chaotic, especially in one of the phases where I do use Frenzied Guard, and it is a thing that kind of attracts zombies to you, which makes sense, but it does mess up with the way I'm able to shoot the orbs. It just got really crazy, a lot of dogs, and maybe not as many zombies, but definitely a lot of the special and elites. Now with this game I definitely noticed that we had to be very cautious and wary, and with this boss fight it is all the time, you have to kind of be very clear away from the zombies. But the second game that we're going to look at is the one where we use the AMP-63s only, no other secondary. All 3 of us just use dual wield AMP-63s, fully pack-a-punched, gold rarity. Now the first stage of the boss seemed to be going very well. I didn't really have to worry about anything, but out of all the games we had a freaking Panzer spawn in. Yes, when we were using the AMP-63s, a Panzer decided to just hop in, and obviously we took it out fairly easily, but it was just interesting to see that in the previous game we only had from the second phase of the boss fight having like elite spawning like Megaton and the Panzer. The interesting thing is that there was no other elite like a Megaton or a second Panzer that spawned in, and there seemed to be a slightly less amount of manglers and definitely a smaller amount of mimics that didn't spawn from the beginning but kind of spawned in at a higher rate towards the end. And I did end up going down in this run, which is interesting because I don't think I went down in my first run that I ever did with the other weapons. And obviously the AMP-63s are great pistols to use, especially on the boss. Now they don't deal insanely huge amounts of damage, but the fact that you're using dual wield and, you know, you're shooting both of them, they seem to, you know, rip through the crowds of zombies and go through them faster. But I didn't overly feel like this was definitely more chaotic than the previous one. But I don't think these trio games are really what I should be fully looking at, because I think I noticed a huge difference in the solo games. So the first thing that we're going to look at is actually the easier version of my solo game, where I use the AMP-63s to finish off the boss, or just in general use it on the boss itself. And to my surprise, this was my first time ever using the AMP-63s, and it was very easy. Now I didn't really pay attention to the amount of zombies that spawned in, but looking back at my gameplay, there was definitely less elites and definitely not as chaotic as obviously the trio game, which makes sense because there are more more players, which does increase the difficulty, but that's why I wanted to have 2 of the trio games to use as an example, and then have 2 of solo games to use as an example. And I'm not saying this one is compared to this one, so I'm not comparing the solo to the trio, I'm just comparing the 2 solos to each other and the 2 trios to each other as well. Now, starting off in the solo game with the AMP-63s, obviously I was able to take out the boss's health and things like that, and this game wasn't anything super special. I had only 1 Megaton spawn in, similar to the way we only had 1 Panzer spawn in with the AMP-63s, and there was a relatively similar amount of elites and zombies in general. And I know I keep going back to the elites, but I think, as I've mentioned, I think there's just a similar amount of them always spawning in. There will always be a similar amount of manglers and mimics that always spawn in. The mimics will be annoying because they'll suck you in, and the manglers are annoying because they shoot and they seem to have amazingly good aim. Thank God there's no Tempest. We have to be honest about that. And then my last game that I will be looking at is probably one of the most interesting to me, because I'll be honest, I wasn't able to finish it. It was probably one of my shortest runs, and what I used in this was the Ray Gun Pack-a-Punch level 3 and the Gallo, which unfortunately wasn't Pack-a-Punch level 2 because I wasn't able to do it fast enough. And this is a lower round. This is round 5. The other one was round 6, and we're doing this on round 5, and I wasn't able to finish it. It got so chaotic, it got so hectic, and there were so many zombies spawning in with the elites that I just couldn't finish it. I still got at least one of the phases down. On my first phase, before I even destroyed the first orb, I already had a Megaton spawn in, which was very interesting compared to my previous game. And to top this all off, I had a Panzer spawn in. So from what I'm noticing, guys, if you use weapons that are considered by, I guess, Treyarch as kind of more better in a way, for example, if you use a pistol, that's a pistol, so I guess Treyarch would look at that in a way of, this is a difficult weapon to use, so we'll spawn in less elites on you. And if you use a ray gun or assault rifles mixed with shotguns, they will bombard you with elites, with specials, with zombies. It just gets so chaotic, and I'm blown away by this being the case. It is a certain thing, I know that this is in the past in few games, and I think I even had a second Megaton spawn in, which is mind-blowing. So I had 2 Megatons and 1 Panzer spawn in. I didn't fully notice it, but I noticed in my corner of the eye when I was playing there was a second Megaton because I split the previous one, and it was just crazy. So I don't know, I'm not 100% telling you that this is the case, that you should spawn in and use the AMP-63s only, but it's just a very interesting thing that is in here, and I think it's stupid because I think maybe, I don't know, maybe it's not stupid. You are using more difficult weapons, but it's stupid for the people that think, oh, I'll spawn in and I'll go in with the ray gun because that's a wonder weapon, and then they end up going down because the boss fight is way more difficult because of you using good weapons. And then if you spawn in and use bad weapons, like let's say the M79 that I used in one of my games, the AMP-63s, it will be easier. Again, these were only 4 games, so do be sure to comment down below what you think of this, what your opinion is on this, and do you think this is true or not? And I will see you all guys in the next one.